The rain had started just after sunset, a soft drumming that grew steadier as the sky deepened from violet to black. You stood by the kitchen window, watching droplets race down the glass, blurring the streetlights into warm halos. The world outside felt distant, muffled, as if wrapped in layers of cotton. Inside, the kitchen glowed with a single overhead light, casting everything in a gentle amber. You hadn't planned anything elaborate for dinner. There was no one to impress, no schedule to keep. Just you, the rain, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the corner. You opened it slowly, letting the cool air brush against your face, and surveyed what you had. A few eggs, some scallions beginning to wilt at the edges, a small block of tofu, half a cabbage, and a container of leftover rice from 2 nights ago. Simple enough. You pulled out the rice first, peeling back the lid. It had dried slightly on top, the grains no longer glossy, but still good. You scooped it into a small bowl and set it aside. The tofu came next, cold and smooth in your palm, then the eggs, the scallions, a knob of ginger you found tucked behind a jar of pickles. You arranged everything on the counter in a neat row, the way your mother used to do, and stood there for a moment, hands resting on the cool surface, letting the rhythm of the rain settle into your bones. There was no rush. You filled the kettle and set it on the stove, turning the dial until the blue flame caught with a soft whoosh. While the water heated, you rinsed the scallions under the tap, rubbing your thumb along their pale roots to loosen any dirt. The smell was sharp and green, cutting through the warm stillness of the room. You trimmed the ends, sliced them thin, and set them in a small dish. The ginger came next, peeled with the edge of a spoon, the papery skin falling away in delicate curls, then minced until your fingers smelled of earth and spice. The kettle began to hiss. You poured the boiling water into a pot, added a square of kombu you'd been saving, and watched as it softened and unfurled like something waking from sleep. A small splash of soy sauce, a pinch of salt. You stirred it once gently and let it simmer. The tofu required care. You drained it, pressed it between your palms to remove the excess water, then cut it into soft cubes. Each piece wobbled slightly on the cutting board, pale and delicate. You slid them into the pot, where they bobbed quietly in the broth, absorbing the warmth. While the soup cooked, you turned your attention to the rice. It was too dry to eat as it was, so you decided to fry it. You heated a pan, added a little oil, and waited until it shimmered. The rice went in with a satisfying sizzle, and you stirred it slowly, breaking apart the clumps, letting each grain turn golden at the edges. The smell rose up, nutty and comforting, and you cracked an egg directly into the center, watching the white spread and bubble before folding it into the rice with quick, practiced motions. The scallions went in last, their color bright against the pale yellow and white. You stirred everything together, added a dash of soy sauce, a sprinkle of sesame oil, and turned off the heat. The pan crackled softly as it cooled. You set the table for one. A single bowl, a single plate, a pair of chopsticks, a spoon. You poured the soup, pale gold, fragrant with cubes of tofu and a few floating scallions, and placed it beside the fried rice. Steam rose from both, curling upward in lazy spirals. Before sitting, you paused. The rain was still falling, heavier now, tapping against the window in an uneven melody. You turned off the overhead light and switched on a small lamp in the corner instead. The kitchen softened immediately, shadows pooling in the spaces between objects, everything a little gentler, a little more like a memory. You sat down. The first spoonful of soup was almost too hot, but you sipped it anyway, letting it warm you from the inside out. The broth was simple, clean, salty, with the faint bitterness of kombu beneath. The tofu dissolved on your tongue, soft as clouds. You took your time, alternating between soup and rice, chopsticks clicking softly against the bowl. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sweeping across the ceiling before disappearing. The rain continued, constant and unhurried. You thought about nothing in particular, small things, half-formed thoughts that came and went like the ripples in your soup. A conversation from earlier in the week, a book you'd been meaning to finish, the way the ginger had smelled on your fingers. When the bowl was empty, you rinsed it under warm water, watching the last traces of broth swirl down the drain. You wiped the counter, folded the dish towel, and placed it back on its hook. The kitchen was clean again, as if nothing had happened, but you felt the difference, a fullness, a quiet satisfaction that had nothing to do with hunger. You made tea. Just a simple green tea, nothing fancy, steeped in a small clay pot you'd bought years ago and never quite remembered where. You poured it into a cup, cradled it in both hands, and carried it to the living room. The couch was old, sunken in the middle from years of use, but it held you perfectly. You tucked your legs beneath you, pulled a blanket over your lap, and sipped the tea slowly. It was bitter, grassy, with a sweetness that lingered at the back of your throat. The rain had softened to a drizzle now, a whisper against the glass. You thought about how many nights you'd spent like this, alone but not lonely. Cooking simple meals, cleaning up after yourself, moving through small rituals that required nothing but presence. There was a kind of peace in it, a steadiness that felt rare in a world that often moved too fast. You finished your tea, rinsed the cup, and turned off the lamp. The apartment fell into darkness, save for the faint glow of the streetlights outside. You stood by the window one last time, watching the rain trace its endless patterns down the glass, and felt, for just a moment, that everything was exactly as it should be. Then you turned, walked to your room, and let the night settle around you like a soft blanket.